The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, October 23rd. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week. I am in New York City at a hotel. I am praying. I think you should all join me in a quick prayer to the gods of the internet, the gods of Wi-Fi, to sustain our connection. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully everything good. If you can give me, those of you in the chat, give me a thumbs up on picture, on audio. Just let me know how it's going, so I have some sense of what is going on. I'd appreciate that. Let's see. Let me just do that. All right, it's good. Everybody says it's good. That's good. That's good. Great. Thank you. All right, I'm going to put this over there. No, not like that. All right, so I want to start today by apologizing for making an error. I do that periodically, and you guys are very good at correcting me. Usually, those of you who correct me are pretty obnoxious about it and use this as opportunity to rub their hands and see, Yaron always gets stuff wrong. He's always wrong. He doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. You're too dependent on mainstream media or whatever the bullshit is. So yes, I did get something wrong, and that was related to the ballroom that is being built in the East Wing of the White House, that I wrongly said. I've wrongly said that the taxpayer pays for it, and it's coming out of federal spending. And I said, in a time of government shutdown, how come they're spending money on this? Because this is a Trump priority. We'll get to the shutdown in a minute, in a little while, but so let's focus on the ballroom. It turns out that I was wrong, that the ballroom indeed is not being funded by Congress. It is not being funded by taxpayer money. Now, there's a real question about whether the president can just decide unilaterally to destroy a big piece of the White House to rebuild something else without congressional approval, but he's doing it. Nobody seems to be too complaining, so I guess it's right. So it is funded by private contributions. Now, I will say, I still think a lot of people who are not getting paid right now because of the government shutdown resent the fact that government is spending money, even if it is so-called private contributions, on the ballroom. So I think my analysis was correct in that sense. But it is absolutely true. This ballroom is going to be funded by corporate and individual funds. $230 million, I think, or something north of that. Now, there's a sense in which this is worse, much worse. Because this is just more of the corruption, the cronyism. I mean, the list of the people giving money for the ballroom is a list of companies who have contracts with the government. Do you think those contracts are affected by the fact that they're giving money to the ballroom? You think there's any trade here? You give money to the ballroom, we'll give you juicy contracts. I mean, there's no doubt that there is. You just look at the list and you can see anywhere from Plantier to Lockheed Martin, of course, all the tech companies that are constantly handing over money to Trump and the Trump administration in order to get them off their back. Microsoft, Meta, Alphabet, Amazon. This is just more of the just horrific kind of cronyism that we're seeing. And then, of course, on the individual side, you've got Blackstone CEO, and you've got Harold Hamm from the oil billionaire. You've got people who have stuff in front of the government, and this is one way to get on Trump's good side, and he will make decisions that are beneficial to you. And given Trump's oversized role in every aspect of the government these days, and given the fact that Trump is playing at central planner-in-chief, it's incredibly valuable to be on Trump's good side. And this is that. This is exactly that. This is basically putting money into Trump-loved project in order to get favors with Trump. So it's worse than if it was the government's money, right? Taxpayer money, because it's just, we are establishing in this country kind of a class of oligarchs. We're slowly shifting to the Hungarian, or more appropriately Russian model, where businessmen are successful because the government chooses them to be successful, and they fail because the government decides that they should fail, and if they really want them to fail, they fall off out of windows, or they even go to jail. We're shifting to a business model, at least under Trump. I don't know if this is sustainable with any other president, but at least under Trump, where Trump gets to decide who the winners are, even in tech. It really is stunning. And of course, again, people will accuse me, of being overly negative, but here's the reality. There has never been an administration in all of American history that comes even close to the level of corruption of this administration. I mean, you would have to have 5 to 10 Yaron Brook shows in order to cover all the corruption and all the bad stuff that this administration is doing. Because it doesn't do one or two little things. It does 5, 6, 7, 8, it's all day. I mean, you have to listen to the president. Every day he has a press conference. And every day the amount of BS coming out and the amount of corruption being revealed is just stunning. So even if you had 5 to 10 Yaron Brook shows covering everything, you would still have to talk a lot about the corruption of the Trump administration just to cover what he's actually doing on a day-to-day basis. Richard Hanania has a good little piece. I mean, some of it's a little overwrought, but a good little piece on this today. And, he says, everybody thinks that the media is reporting too much about Trump and talking too much about Trump's corruption and dishonesty. But no, the media is not even covering this anywhere near the proportion at which Trump is different than any other president. Here's the thing. Do you remember how much talk there was, and maybe many of you thought there wasn't enough talk, about Hunter Biden? Hunter Biden, there's talk about him getting $11 million from Ukraine and then something from China, maybe combined $10 to $20 million of payments. There's no direct evidence, although there's some circumstantial evidence of involvement by Joe Biden in all of that. And the right in America went berserk, freaked out over like $11 million. And this is the most corrupt administration, and this is a mafia family, and on and on and on about just how awful and horrific Hunter was. And everybody just freaked out. And put aside that the media, there was a cover up and all that stuff, but it was small. I mean, by some estimates, the profit to the Trump family just in the second term, I'm not counting what Jared Kushner got from the Saudis between administrations, right? After he left, after he left the first administration and before 2024. Between 2020 and 2024, Jared Kushner, of course, got $2 billion investment by the Saudi royal family. Would have never happened if it was just Jared Kushner. It was Jared Kushner because of because of the connections he had established, given that he was the son-in-law of Trump and given his power within the administration. I'm not even counting that, right? and that is dramatically more than anything Hunter Biden ever got. But since Trump came into office, the Trump family has profited to something like the tune of $3.4 billion. And Trump has been directly involved. He's not hiding the fact that he's directly involved. He claims his kids are managing this, but there's no separation. He owns these shares. I mean, the stuff they're doing and the stuff they've done with crypto, the stuff they've done with, the deals in the Middle East, with the Qatari government, with the Saudi government, with UAE, I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of corruption. And this is just directly to Trump's family. I'm not talking about all the money that is going to Trump causes by the law firms, the money going to Trump himself from the news organizations he's suing. I'm going to tell you about how he's using his power to settle, quote, settle with everybody because they don't want to be on the bad side of the president. I mean, he's even trying to get $280 million from the Justice Department. We talked about that yesterday. I mean, it's just stunning. And then, of course, you've got people like David Sachs, who works for a venture capital fund that invests in crypto, hasn't left that job, still has all those investments, and yet he is the White House crypto czar. No conflict of interest there. And you've got Steve Witkoff's son, who's involved in the Trump family crypto business and was in Qatar to get a major investment in their crypto stuff from the Qataris as all this stuff is being negotiated. Witkoff is the guy negotiating, and his son is flying around with him to negotiate his own deals. Now, that isn't corrupt. It's just not in the same ballpark. I mean, Hunter Biden and the Biden family are amateurs. And this is the big difference between past administration and this one. Past administrations tried to hide this. This administration doesn't care. Just doesn't care. So, this is why there's so much about Trump, because Trump does so much. He's doing so many things like nobody else has ever done before. He's just every day something new, some decent, mostly bad. And you want the news from me, that is the news. He is the news. And the coverage he gets on MSNBC, on CNN, the people who criticize him, is nowhere near enough, and nowhere near deep enough, and nowhere near sustained enough to cover everything bad that he does. And of course, Fox and those guys just approve of everything he does and cheer him on. So you're not really getting news from anybody, and you're certainly not getting any kind of sense of any attempt of objectivity. I think I attempt to do that. All right. All right. So, let's talk about some of the actions, some of the stuff that's going on today. Well, in a press conference just a little while ago, Trump and Secretary of War, Hegseth, basically declared war. They've declared war on the cartels, not the cartels in Mexico, for some reason, even though if fentanyl is the thing that is killing Americans, it's not cocaine, it's not really heroin. What's killing Americans is fentanyl. I think that something like 100% of all fentanyl comes from Mexico. But they don't want the hassle of going to war with Mexico, and Mexico has a border with the United States, and the reality is that they're trying to have a decent relationship with the president of Mexico. So they're not going to go to war with Mexico. So they've chosen weaker targets. So they're going to go to war with Venezuela, with the cartels in Venezuela, who are not really involved in the fentanyl trade, mostly involved in the cocaine trade. And they are now being authorized basically to bomb, to not just bomb boats that we are told, no verification, but we are told are drug smuggling boats. By the way, these boats, I read this somewhere, in order to get from Venezuela to the United States, given the size of these boats, they would have to refuel 20 times. You could arrest them at any one of those refueling stations. You could sink them at any one of those refueling stations without bombing the hell out of them and killing people. Assuming they were even carrying drugs. And my guess is they're not carrying drugs to the United States. You don't use little boats like that to carry drugs to the United States. I did notice the last couple of days that they're bombing boats in the Pacific. Maybe Pacific coast. Maybe they've been listening to the Yaron Brook show, where I've been saying that almost all the drugs coming into the United States come in on the Pacific side. It doesn't come in on the Atlantic side, on the Caribbean side. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But they did a couple of bombs. They bombed a couple of boats on the Pacific side. But again, not a fentanyl. That would require them to figure out how to stop smuggling across the southern border. And even though they've stopped immigration from the southern border, they have not stopped the flow of fentanyl, not through the southern border, not on boats into California, Texas, and so on. They just haven't stopped it. It's nowhere near, right? Anyway, now Trump is declaring an armed conflict with drug trafficking groups. He's designated them as international terrorist groups. He's already done that. And then today they announced that they will start bombing ground facilities in places like Venezuela, potentially Colombia. So we're going to, this is a war on drugs, which is basically announced by Richard Nixon in the 1970s, has been a complete and utter failure. It's only made drugs and drug deaths and the destruction of drug and the drug trades and the cartels much, much worse. We're doubling up on it. We're doing more. When, of course, the solution to the problem of drugs, the way to get rid of fentanyl is to make cocaine and heroin legal. If cocaine and heroin were legal, nobody would buy fentanyl. Because cocaine and heroin would be so cheap. Why would you bother with fentanyl? Fentanyl requires a chemical, all these chemicals, they require some combination. Cocaine and heroin are easy to grow. They grow plenty in tropical climates, and they'd be really, really cheap. And you could save a lot of money from new wars. So for some reason, Trump has decided that the one war he does want to engage in, and I think the first person I heard raise this issue about going to war with the cartels was Vivek Ramaswamy, who's probably going to become the governor of Ohio, unless there's a big anti-Indian vote. We'll see. But probably going to become the governor of Ohio. We're going to war against the cartels. I couldn't believe it when Vivek said it. I thought it was nuts. I thought it was crazy. But notice that they're not going to war with the cartels in Mexico that actually do the damage. No. We wouldn't want to do that. It's the same thing as they did before, right? After 9/11, you don't go to Iran, which is actually funding terrorists and inspiring terrorists all over the world. You go to Iraq, you go to their much poorer cousin. You do irrelevant stuff. You don't go to the source, even assuming if you wanted a strategy to destroy the importation of fentanyl in. But this is ridiculous. I mean, the president of Colombia at some point said the truth out loud, and he basically said, "What is your problem, people, with cocaine? Just make it legal, and it's not that bad. It's not that bad for you, and it's not that bad. Just make it legal, and you solve the problem. Why are you so obsessed with this stuff?" That is true. It's probably the only thing I agree with the President Colombia on. So yeah, it looks like the United States is going to get more aggressive, not less aggressive. It looks like we're going to be bombing in South America soon. Hopefully they don't decide to bomb in retaliation and bomb, I don't know, Puerto Rico in retaliation. Yeah, heroin is very addictive and it does bad things. Don't take it. Don't take heroin. Do not inject heroin. And if you do, it's your problem, not mine. And if it was legal, then my guess is a bunch of companies would figure out ways to get you off the addiction and maybe rewire your brain back. Or maybe the rewiring of your brain would be a good thing because, I mean, you took the heroin, your brain might not be functioning that well to begin with. Maybe it needs rewiring. Maybe the heroin will do you good. I don't know. Heroin's a lot more addictive than nicotine. So, I mean, the whole idea of nicotine being addictive is way exaggerated. I know so many people who've gone off nicotine cold turkey without any problem. I don't know anybody who's ever gone heroin addiction cold turkey. You can't, I mean, without help, without real help. So no, heroin is really addictive and really bad, but okay, don't take it. But there are a lot of things you shouldn't do, even if they're legal. Rob says Tropical Storm Melissa is going to be a hurricane. Yeah, but it's not going to affect Puerto Rico, so I don't care that much. All right, so that's the cartels. Here's one, you know, where as Trump flip-flops through different issues, changes his minds constantly, or revises his position based on new information. How about that? You know, yesterday the Trump administration announced new sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. And it turns out that these new sanctions have teeth. It's shocking that this was not done previously. It's shocking the Biden administration didn't do this. It's shocking Trump didn't do this earlier. But these have real teeth. You know, this is making it very difficult for India to import Russian oil, and it looks like they're going to cut importation of Russian oil significantly. That'll also help them vis-a-vis the tariffs that they are paying the United States. But they were negotiating around the tariffs, and they didn't offer to stop buying the oil because of the tariffs. But this, the sanctioning of Roosevelt and Lukoil, because of the fact that if you violate the sanction, there are all kinds of consequences downstream, they are basically backing off of buying Russian oil. So it sounds like the Indians are doing it, but also, even more importantly maybe, is the fact that it is really hitting the Chinese hard. That is, China today announced China today announced that it is going to stop buying oil, at least from these two companies. Now, it's likely that that Russia will find a way around this. I mean, the sanctions on the two largest oil companies, but at the end of the day, Putin controls all of it, right? So you could imagine the oil being funneled off to some of the smaller oil companies that maybe have not been sanctioned, and still be able to sell to China. But as of now, both China and India are significantly shrinking their purchase of Russian oil. Russia's basically funding its war to a large extent with money coming in, you know, from oil. So Russia, to a large extent, I mean, their war effort is going to be significantly, I think, crippled. Is going to be significantly crippled by if they lose these markets, particularly if they lose the Chinese and the Indian markets. So that is good. You know, starving the Russian market is good, and you can see these are really having an effect by the fact that oil prices jumped. Oil prices went significantly up. So people expect a lot less oil coming out of Russia. Therefore, there'll be a lot less oil in the world market. And as a consequence of that, oil prices went up. So it has, that suggests to me that this is, we'll see if they sustain, if they stay up. As I said a few minutes ago, I believe that Russia will find a way around this. I don't think this is long lasting, but at least for now, it's having a real impact, and will be significant. Oil prices spiked to above 64, which is means that people expect reduced supply. It also means that whatever oil Russia does sell, not from these two companies, they sell at a higher price. So we'll see what impact net this all has, but I think, at least in the short run, it's going to have a significant impact on the Russians, and then the question is, can they sustain it? Also, supposedly from the administration, there was a Wall Street Journal article yesterday saying that the U.S. lifted restrictions on Ukraine's use of European long-range missiles. So the U.S. has to approve, because U.S. technology is in the missiles, they use long-range, even though they're withholding the Tomahawks. They're letting, for the first time supposedly, they're letting, for example, the Ukrainians use the Storm Shadow, which is a British missile, firing it deep into Russia. So yesterday there was the story that the Trump administration has approved this, and that this is part of the pressure that Trump is putting on Putin to agree to this ceasefire deal, or to agree to better terms, I guess, for the Ukrainians. Interestingly enough, Trump doesn't want to be associated with that at all, and he doesn't always deny stuff that's written about him, but he did go yesterday on Truth Social and say the Wall Street Journal on the USA's approval of Ukraine being allowed to use long-range missiles deep into Russia is fake news. The U.S. has nothing to do with those missiles, wherever they may come from, or what Ukraine does with them, which is nonsense. That's just not true. But, he probably got a phone call from Putin or one of Putin's cronies saying, what are you doing? Why are you approving this stuff? It's very hostile. Don't behave like this, Donald, really. And he backed off. So while I think the approval is really there, we'll see if the Ukrainians keep using them, Trump is distancing himself from having anything to do with it, which is just interesting in and of itself. All right, let's go back to the government shutdown. The government is now the second longest government shutdown in history. It's now longer than the government shutdown in 95, 96 that actually produced the compromise between Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, that actually put in place mechanisms to control government spending and actually led the U.S. government for the first time ever, well, not ever, for the first time in modern times to have a surplus in 1999. So in 1995 and 96, there was real effort to come to some kind of deal, and that deal involved cutting government spending. Again, Newt Gingrich, who controlled Congress, they had passed a budget that cut spending dramatically. Bill Clinton said he was going to veto it. The government shut down for 21 days, but they ultimately negotiated a deal that allowed the government to open, and where what do you call it? I'm reading David Sussin's comment, which I shouldn't do in the middle of a sentence. So they took this seriously and actually cut government spending, at least as a percentage of GDP, if not net real government spending. This time, the government is shut down. There's no indication it's going to reopen. Nobody really seems to care. Democrats and Republicans seem fine with the government shutdown. Trump has manipulated the whole thing in a way where he's basically paying the people he wants to pay and not paying the people he doesn't want to pay. Now, this is probably illegal, but again, this is like the corruption. Trump does so many things that are illegal. There's so many, for example, lawsuits right now against him that you can't keep track anymore. And a lot of legal scholars are like, who has the energy to follow this anymore? But it's probably illegal what he's doing. But, you know, for example, the Department of War has repurposed about $8 billion in funds that were supposed to be used for something else are now being used to pay the 1.3 million members of the armed forces. That's not what a government shutdown looks like. You don't get to pay out yeah, I mean, it's just shenanigans. For example, some agents of ICE, FBI, Homeland Security seem to be receiving their paychecks. Others not, but some yes. The president has pledged to use tariff revenue, as if it's not just regular revenue, tax revenue, to fund food aid programs for low-income mothers and their children. How can he do that when the government shut down and no budget's been approved? No spending has been approved. He also said he's going to resume paying the $3 billion in farm aid because the farmers need it. No standard, certainly no Congress. Congress is, I mean, for that matter, we might have a permanent government shutdown. That'll basically mean Congress is not functioning. But is Congress functioning anyway? At the same time, things that are not being funded are things that he thinks hurt the Democrats. So they canceled $28 billion for projects located in Republican areas. They're firing federal employees who they think who are working in government programs that the Democrats like. But even there, the Democrats don't seem fazed. They don't seem to care. I mean, generally, the country's going on. Everything's fine. I mean, this always happens in a government shutdown. Panic and hysteria. The world's going to come to an end. The economy will collapse. The stock market will go to zero. GDP is going to be hurt dramatically. And then there's a government shutdown and nothing really happens. Nobody's that upset. The markets don't collapse. GDP is fine. Arguably, it's actually good that the government shuts down. But usually politicians are panicked. Who's going to get blamed? This time, they've managed to organize a government shutdown without any pain. Now, for now, there's certain things that have certain deadlines, and if you don't start paying into them, particularly the welfare programs, I mean, that's when the pain happens. If Social Security checks are going out and Medicare is being paid, so those are the big, and interest on the debt is being paid, those are the big parts of the government, right? If interest on the debt doesn't get paid, the government is in default, it goes bankrupt. Social Security, nobody's going to stop paying Social Security. Medicare, nobody's going to stop paying Medicare. So the real pain points they've eliminated. Now they're paying the military somehow through some shenanigan. The big one is another welfare program called food stamps. And funding for food stamps is going to run out, supposedly, in several states because federal government gives the money to the states and the states distribute it. A number of states are going to run out of that money by November 1st. What then? So November 1st might be the point where they have to make a decision, where there's a pain point because people who get food stamps will be upset. I mean, is anybody a lot of people get food stamps, right? It's tens of millions of people, and a lot of them are in red states, and a lot of them voted for Trump. So, but as far as I can tell, money's being spent. I mean, I'm at the airport all the time. TSA is working fine. Air traffic control is working fine. I haven't heard of any real problems with air traffic control. Things seem to be kind of chugging along. So I don't know what the pain point is. Keep the government shut. How many people use food stamps? tens of millions of Americans use food stamps. About 50% of Americans, I think it's 51 or 52% of Americans, are net recipients of welfare payments from the government. That is, they get more payments from the government than they pay in taxes. And food stamps is a big part of it, and again, it's tens of millions of people. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll keep track, but it's not a real government shutdown when you can reallocate funds and make the payments anyway, and the government really hasn't shut down, and most of the stuff that the government does is still working. The FBI is still out there. As far as I can tell, ICE is still out there now. Supposedly, a lot of these people, according to ChatGPT, 42 million people get food stamps. That is a lot of people, 42 million people. Lincoln says it's like 12% of the country. Maybe ChatGPT has a percentage. But yeah, it's a lot, surprisingly. But 12.3% of the population. Welfare is massive in the United States. And of course, the biggest welfare plan is Social Security. They've taken that off the table because the one thing you have to keep doing is paying welfare. The real thing is if government employees get really pissed off because they're not getting paid, like TSA, air traffic controllers, others. I mean, they've even managed to keep the national parks open, not to piss off the people visiting national parks. So what's the point of having a budget if the president can just decide unilaterally what he spends it on, when he spends it on, how he spends it on, and there's no shutdown, there's no anything. Yeah. We live in a very strange country right now where the Constitution, the rule of law, the rules, any kind of rules governing have just been put to the side and are being ignored, and they don't exist, and it's just gone. It just doesn't exist. And, you know, we could probably survive it through the Trump years, probably, maybe. But how long, you know, how is this going to translate into the future? How's it going to work in the future? And what happens if every administration adopts this? And if, as we move into the future, you know, it gets worse and worse and worse, and then the Constitution becomes completely irrelevant, and political system completely changes or collapses, which is, it looks like, is where we're heading. The only thing that can save us, really, are the courts. And so far, the courts have indicated a willingness to cave. Now, we will see if, you know, how far they're willing to go. And you know, a big one here is what Trump is doing with the whole election mechanism. You know, he now has appointed a person in the federal government. This is a new agency, if you will, called the Election Protection Programs. This is part of Homeland Security, and it's a department that is concerned with election integrity. He is placed as the head of this program, Heather Honey, who is a leader and an avid spokesman for, and somebody who's been very active around election denials of the 2020 election, claims of election fraud left and right, the idea that you know, the electronic voting is super you know, super fraudulent. I mean, she's a partisan hack who is committed to conspiracy theories around elections. And she's in a position now to, I don't know, dictate election technology and the elections as they happen in the future. And generally, at the state level as well, the Republicans have put in charge of many of these elections, election deniers throughout the country. Republicans have bought into these ideas. Are we ever going to have an actual, real election again. Again, I mean, Trump is a student of what Orban and what Putin have done. I mean, Putin has an election. Every 4 years they have an election. Orban has elections. Now, Orban might lose the next election because he's so unpopular right now. He might lose in spite of how much he rigs it. But Putin will never lose. And one really wonders to what extent the Trump administration is putting people in place that are going to create standards and processes that they can rig. I mean, Wookie in the White House is Kurt Olson, who worked for Michael Lindell, Pillow Man, and was a big promoter of stolen election theories, all kinds of stolen election theories. And the Director of Public Affairs at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is a woman by the name of Marcy McCarthy, who spread debunked claims about voting machines in Georgia when she was the chairwoman of the DeKalb County Republican Party. Now, she's the Director of Public Affairs at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. And there are lots of these people. This is what I told you all the time about Trump's second term. Trump's second term is about putting his people in there. People who will do whatever he wants. People who are committed to MAGA and committed to the insanity of MAGA. And these are people who have in the past, in 2020, and would in the future, completely undermine the integrity of the election system. And it could be that these appointments that he's making will have, greater consequences to what happens to our election, our political system, than maybe any other appointments he makes. He also said, when was it, 2 days ago, in one of these press conferences where he's sitting around and talking to the press, he says, and I'm quoting Trump here, "We can never let what happened in 2020 elections happen again. We just can't let that happen. I know Kash," this is head of the FBI, "is working on it." That's kind of ominous and scary. "Everyone is working on it. And certainly Tulsi's head of all intelligence agencies. She's working on it. We can't let that happen again to our country." What happened in 2020? Nothing. He didn't get to steal the election. What happened in 2020 is that Donald Trump was prevented from stealing an election. And now he says the head of the FBI and the head of our intelligence agencies are working on making sure that he can steal elections in the future. I mean, he said it, and that's the only way. I mean, I know he doesn't interpret it that way because I don't know that he believes himself. I don't know what he believes, but the election wasn't stolen. People think that Trump cannot be elected again because he's term limited, but Steve Bannon is out there everywhere saying Donald Trump will run for a third term and will win a third term. And I don't know what the strategy is. I don't know how they get around the constitutional thing, and I think at the end of the day it's unlikely that he runs. But okay, so Donald Trump uses all these tools that he has in place in order to make sure that J.D. Vance wins, or in order to make sure that Don Jr. wins, or whoever he decides is his heir and should win. These people are all loyal to him. He'll just tell them what to do. They're telling you exactly what they want to do. They're not hiding it. This is not hidden in code. I mean, that's the thing about Trump. He's corrupt right up front. He just takes a suitcase of cash. There's no ifs, buts, maybe. The corruption is happening right in front of our eyes. You cannot fail to see it. And he doesn't care. And when asked about it, he says, oh, yeah, who cares? And in terms of rigging the next election, he says, we're not going to let 2020 happen again. We're not going to let it happen again that if I feel like I won an election, or if I feel like my people won an election, they won't be able to win it. They should win it if I feel like they won it. This is not pretend. This is real. All right, let me see. I did see Troy. Thank you, Troy. Troy came in with 500 Australian dollars. Really appreciate that. Thanks for the support. And we've got John with the sticker. I'll just go through stickers quickly. Stephen, and another Stephen Hopper and Stephen Kreisman. And those are stickers for today. Thank you guys. Really appreciate the support. All right, what we have left? We have Gaza and San Francisco. So let's quickly talk about Gaza. The reality right now is that I think there's a lot of doubt about being able to disarm Hamas. There's a lot of doubt about who will be in the military force to go in there, and the peacekeeping force to go in there, supposedly after Hamas disarms, or maybe to disarm Hamas. Israel has basically put its foot down that Turkey cannot send troops, Cartel cannot send. I don't think Gaza has any troops, but Turkey cannot send troops. And so the latest proposal is Azerbaijan and Indonesia, which I think Israel will accept. Azerbaijan is a Muslim country friendly to Israel. Indonesia is not yet friendly to Israel, but there are noises about establishing relationships, and Indonesia is not hostile to Israel like Turkey is. So they would accept Indonesian and Azeri troops. But I don't think Indonesia and Azerbaijan want to send troops into a war zone to fight Hamas, which is what will be necessary in order to disarm them. And there really does seem to be now a kind of an implicit plan that I think is being pushed by Jared Kushner to basically focus on creating two Gazas. Having a Gaza Strip that is controlled by Israel and a Gaza Strip that is controlled by Hamas. And to invest a lot of money and rebuild the part of Gaza that is controlled by Israel, what's called the Yellow Line now, and build that up and not pour any resources, not put any money, and not put any kind of construction material and things like that into the area controlled by Hamas. Give them food, humanitarian aid, I guess that is a requirement. But other than that, not do anything. And over time, potentially, allow Gazan civilian population screened by Israel to move from the Hamas-controlled areas to the Israeli-controlled areas. And basically, ultimately, make Hamas so unpopular because people will see across the border Gazans are living really, really well and they're struggling. Hamas so unpopular that they will dissolve and they will go away. Whether a plan like that can work is doubtful, quite doubtful. But that looks like what they're doing because I don't think, as I said from the beginning, that I don't think that the plan that they put together is doable. I don't think it's doable because Hamas does not want to disarm. Hamas does not want to give up control. And the only force that can actually get them to do that and has the capacity and the will to do that is Israel. And nobody wants Israel to go into Gaza and finish the job. Why? I do not know. It has to do more with PR than anything political. But I think everybody in the region would thank Israel if they actually did that. They won't admit that, but they would thank them at the end. So, the struggle is going to be how to keep Hamas out of the Israeli side. So the idea is to create a vetting program that Israeli authorities would lead, that would vet the Palestinians who wanted to move from the Hamas side to the Israeli side. We will see. We will see. But this is the plan that is evolving right now, the plan that it really does seem like Jared Kushner is pushing. All right. Yesterday I read you something, or the day before, I read you something by Amit Segal from Israel, where he explained how, the reality is that Israel lost a lot of soldiers in order to protect the hostages, right? And he has another piece today that I think is really good. So I'll just read this to you. And I think this is the kind of moral calculus that, or the moral decision-making, the moral principles that Israel's going to have to come to terms with. Because this is not the last time they're going to fight a war. It's not the last time they're going to be hostages. He writes, the claim that the Israeli government ordered the IDF to sacrifice the hostages in Operations Gideon's Chariots, that's the last operation, is the opposite is actually reality. The opposite is true. In fact, in the area where the IDF operated in recent months in southern Gaza, there were enclosed zones that the IDF refrained from entering or bombing due to an assessment that hostages were being held there. In these compounds, Hamas operatives understood that they were largely immune. They not only took part in guarding the hostages, but also attempted to harm IDF soldiers surrounding the area, relying on that safe zone. From one of these areas, terrorists repeatedly came out, attacked soldiers, and returned unharmed to the location that was off limits for airstrikes. And among those attacks were some of the deadliest. In total, around 12 soldiers were killed by terrorists who emerged from that protected compound where a single hostage was being held. So Israel basically sacrificed 12 soldiers, and I use sacrifice because it's the appropriate term. Sacrificed, which is a negative in objectivism, right? Negative term. Sacrificed 12 soldiers in order to protect one hostage. That cannot be right. That cannot be moral. That cannot be just. And again, I'll return to what I said October 8th. Israel should have said, we are going to destroy Hamas, and we are going to do it under the assumption the hostages are dead. If we can rescue some of them, we will, but we will not let Hamas use the hostages to shield itself and to kill our troops from behind their bodies. That wasn't done. A couple of hundred or a few hundred Israeli soldiers died, probably a large number of those because of this policy. And it's a travesty, and Israel needs to completely rethink it, how it deals with hostages in the future. It has to go back to the days of Entebbe, the days before the 2000s, before Netanyahu, when the policy was, we do not negotiate with terrorists, period. Actually, the policy before Oslo, that's what they need to go to. Oslo was the 1994 deal that brought Arafat into the West Bank and agreed to Palestinian autonomy. They need to go back to the days before Oslo, where it was clear, explicit Israeli policies. We do not negotiate with terrorists. Principles, good old days of principles, didn't last very long. All right, let me just see what else we had here. All right. So Trump supposedly had made the decision, and actually troops were on the way, to send troops into San Francisco and to clean the place up, reduce crime and clean it up. And he had a phone call with the mayor of San Francisco, and he has now decided to delay, to bring the troops back, not send them into San Francisco. And the question is, why? What's going on? What did the mayor of San Francisco, Daniel Lowry, say that convinced him? Because Lowry is saying the same stuff a lot of other mayors are saying. Crime is down anyway. We're doing a real good job. And Lowry did ask, I think what Lowry did first and foremost is he was nice to Trump and complimentary. He told Trump, we're going to really try. We're going to let us try first, and then if we can't succeed, then you can come in. And we're going to try to, we can try to, we can try to make the effort. Trump wrote in his feed The federal government was preparing to surge San Francisco, California on Saturday, but friends of mine, we'll get to the other friends in a minute, who live in the area called last night to ask me not to go forward with the surge, in that the mayor, Daniel Laurie, was making substantial progress. I spoke to Mayor Laurie last night, and he asked very nicely, that's the key, very nicely, that I give him a chance to see if he can turn it around. Laurie is a new mayor, a centrist Democrat, or relatively centrist, as centrist as you can get in California. So, Trump says, therefore we will not surge San Francisco on Saturday. Now, you might be bewildered. How come a mayor can convince him? And I don't think it was really the mayor who convinced him. I think it was these friends. And who are the friends? Who does he know in San Francisco? Well, he knows a lot of the tech guys. My guess is that, and I know because I read one of the news stories covered this and said that he had spoken with the CEO of Salesforce. Salesforce has a huge presence in San Francisco. It's right in downtown. The CEO of Salesforce, who was until recently a real bleeding heart liberal, a real bleeding heart leftist, not liberal, real leftist, huge on social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, and woke and everything bad. And he's now become much more friendly to Trump. I wonder why. One wonders, what did he promise? Maybe he promised a $5 million check for the Ballroom. Maybe he promised a $5 million check for something else. Who knows? But the tech bros, the tech guys, basically, convinced him. It's the billionaires who live there. It's the billionaires who are involved in San Francisco politics and who have sway in the White House. They're the ones who have sway in the White House. So again, we don't know exactly what transpired, but it's doubtful that the Democratic mayor of San Francisco is the one who convinced Trump, although Trump does admit that the mayor was very nice to him. And of course, as I said, that matters a lot to Trump. It matters a lot to Trump. Not just to be nice, but to really suck up. Really suck up. All right. That is at least an abbreviated version of the news on this, Thursday, October 23rd. Thank you all for joining. We will shift now to answering your questions. Let me think. There will be no show tomorrow, Friday, and there will be no show on Saturday. Maybe a show on Saturday, potentially a show on Saturday. No show on Sunday, and then Monday no show. Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll play by ear. Next week is not going to be good for shows. I'll do as many as I can, but I'll be on a Israel time zone Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'll be on European time zone after that, and giving lectures in the evening when it's reasonable to do a show. So I could do a show very late at night, but have some early morning flights. So it's going to be a challenge, but I will do my best to try to do a show, some shows next week, but it's going to be difficult, and I will try to do Saturday from London, where I also know there's a good internet connection because we've done many shows from there before. All right, we have a bunch of Super Chat questions. Again, I want to thank Troy for getting us to our target and helping us exceed the target, so thank you to Troy in Australia. Really, really appreciate it. One of these days we'll actually meet when I'm in Australia. That would be cool. One second, let me just see what's going on. I don't know if you heard about this. This is news, but not news that is particularly of interest to you guys, I guess. Puerto Rico, a major pipeline that brings water into the city, into the populated areas from a big reservoir, was a bust, and they had to shut it down. And basically, there's no water. There's no water in much of Puerto Rico. Many households do not have any water, running water. It's now been almost a week. We have a cistern in our building, so we have this big water tank that we were using, and up until yesterday that was fine, but that started getting depleted. And so as of yesterday, yesterday, we are rationing water in our condo building in Puerto Rico. And as my wife said, it's a good time to travel because it means less laundry, fewer showers, so, and she can control it much easier with me not being there. But yeah, unbelievable, right? Unbelievable that, Puerto Rico is such a mess when it comes to infrastructure. And it's such a sad mess because it's all unnecessary. It's all the consequence of bad governance and corruption. It's not a lack of money. It's not a lack of smart people who know what to do. It's just there's no political will to fix these things. And there's so much corruption that you can't get it done properly. All right, let's jump into your questions and then we'll call it a night. All right, David says, David, thank you, $100. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you, David. David said, listen to Hazlitt's book, Economics in One Lesson. Yeah, absolutely invaluable. Yes, required reading, guys. If you're out there and you want to understand how the world works and you want to understand basic economics, the first book you should read is Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Absolutely invaluable. Thanks for the recommendation. How applicable are the many fallacies to modern day economics? All of them are applicable. Every single one of them is applicable. I did a series, God, this is, 12, 13, 14 years ago, for Pajama TV. Do you remember Pajama TV? Those of you, PJ TV. We did a series where we did these short videos. Every video was, okay, here's this chapter in Hazlitt, here's what he covers, and here's how it applies to today. Here's some examples from today. And every one of them applies, and it applies in spades, because the principle is the same. Everything wrong that's being done, that Trump is doing, that Biden did, is a fallacy out of that book. So the main difference is that when Hazlitt wrote it, unions were more powerful. I'm trying to think if there's any, but other than that, everything is applicable. And the broken window fallacy, which is at the heart of Economics in One Lesson, the broken window fallacy is everywhere we look, And it's built into the way they calculate GDP, it's built into the way they think about economics. So thank you, David. Really appreciate the support, and I'm really glad you enjoyed the book. I hope everybody reads it. I see Justin says, very much appreciate all you do. No, that's not the one I was looking for. Anyway, very much appreciate all you do. Any news on another conference in Australia? No, I don't have any news about it. Supposedly something's happening in 2026, but I haven't heard anything, any kind of final decision or any planning or anything like that. I'll have to ask at the Institute. Jonathan, who organized the previous Australian conference, resigned from the Institute and went to work for a startup, and I'm not sure who's in charge of it now. Okay, Justin also says, by the way, loving Economics in One Lesson, did Hazlitt have any interaction with Rand? Yes, he did. Hazlitt did interact with Rand. Rand was a huge fan of Hazlitt's, of Economics in One Lesson, and he in those days, in the 40s I think it was, he had a regular column. He was in the New York Times. Imagine Hazlitt writing regularly. He was the economics guy at the New York Times. So he had about as free market as a person as you could find, who can write well in an understandable way, the chief writer on economics at the New York Times. So, and Rand and he knew each other. Indeed, there are these famous dinners that I wish had been recorded. Imagine if these things would be recorded, of von Mises, Ludwig von Mises, Henry Hazlitt, and Ayn Rand sitting around the table having dinner and conversation. Can you imagine? People say, who would you like to have dinner with? Yeah, those three. Yeah. people who are dead, who would you want to bring back to life to have dinner with? I'd want to be at that conversation, and I would stay completely quiet, just listen to them. You know, at least Mises and Ayn, two of the great geniuses of the 20th century. Hazlitt, amazing, right? So, yeah, really, really good guy. Lincoln says Hazlitt lived to be 98, probably the longest living Austrian economics guy. I don't know. I mean, what's his name? Oh, God. Oh, God. His name escapes me now. The Orthodox Jewish guy who taught at NYU, who's an Austrian economist, is well into his 90s. And might be 98, might be more than that, I don't know. But he's well into his 90s. I think he's still alive. His name will come to me, I hope. That would be horrible if I can't remember his name. All right, Hopper Campbell, maybe somebody in the chat will remind me of the name because it's embarrassing. Do these people, this is Hopper, do these people want no wealth creation, no innovation, no material progress of any kind, or just less of it? They will allow it, but don't want to see an explosion of it. I don't think they think in those terms. They want control. They want power. They also think that innovators would innovate no matter what. It's the same as in China. Why does China regulate everything? Don't they want innovation? Yeah, they want innovation. They think it'll happen anyway. They don't understand the relationship between force and central planning and innovation. They don't understand the necessity of freedom for innovation. So, no, Israel Kurtzner, thank you. William, Israel Kurtzner is, I think, in his, I saw him when he was 91 or 92, so I think he's in his late 90s now. So he might live longer than Hazlitt. It's not that they say, no, we don't want, I mean, I think the environmentalists, the left, doesn't want innovation. And even there, when you read the environmentalists, you read some of their books, which I have, unfortunately, they'll write things like, you know, if we do away with this, real problems will arise, but technology will solve them. And where will this technology come from? Who will develop this technology? Blank. It just happens. They don't understand because they're so focused on labor and exploitation and labor theory and the materialists. They don't understand the role of the mind. They don't understand the role of force in suppressing innovation. They don't understand how market incentivizes innovation. They don't understand any of that. They think innovation just happens and will continue to happen even if we have communism or socialism. And the fact that it didn't happen in the Soviet Union, oh, that's an aberration. And you're underestimating that. They innovated a little bit. So they think that, you know, Americans innovate. They will continue to innovate. It has nothing to do with levels of freedom. Andrew, have you observed this? If you're rationally confident, no matter how many times you admit you were wrong, there will be some people envious of your independence that are driven to prove you wrong about everything. Yeah, and when you are wrong, who jump on you and leap on you and, you know, look, I cover a lot of news every day. I spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out what's true and what's not, what's right or what's wrong, and I have a lot of experience doing that. But given that I do a show every day, given the amount of news I cover, I'm going to get stuff wrong. And when somebody points that out, I'm happy to admit it. But anybody, you know, but if somebody is envious or hateful, then they will leap on any one of those things that are wrong and use them through induction to prove, oh, well, Yaron's useless. He doesn't know anything. He got this wrong. He's getting everything wrong. His whole view of Trump, his whole view of economics, his whole view of Israel, whatever the topic is wrong. Look, he got this wrong. I mean, if this happened like every day to multiple stories, then yeah, I mean, okay, then you should stop listening to me. But if it happens once every 3 weeks, given the amount of shows I do, given the amount of topics I cover in every show, I don't think I'm doing badly. Shazbot. This is a quote from The Wire. I love The Wire. One of the greatest shows ever. Officer 1. The drug war isn't really a war. Officer 2. And why not? Officer 1, I guess, because wars end. Yeah, I mean, there was the 100-Year War in Europe that kind of ended, but dragged on for 100 years. So, I mean, the drug war is not 100-year-old. But look, you can't have a war on inanimate objects. You can't have a drug war. You have a war on cartels, okay. I don't know how you win that war. Wars are won by occupying territory and crushing the enemy. Are we going to occupy all of South America? Because that's what it's going to take. I mean, we could destroy the cartel infrastructure in Venezuela. They'll just move to Colombia. And we destroy it there, they'll move to Ecuador. And when you destroy it there, they'll move back to Venezuela. And of course, most of the infrastructure is in Mexico. So, all right, Andrew says, Rand wrote that it was the age of envy. I doubt the situation has gotten much better since. It's worse. But Rand would disapprove heavily of giving up pursuing values because others envy. Her attitude would be, to hell with them. Yeah, absolutely. Your life is your life. Your life is not determined by other people's envy or fear or hatred or anything like that. You live. You pursue values. If you want a jolt of that energy, go to my Rules for Living, Yaron's Rules for Life, where I talk a lot about this, right? I talk about pursuit of values and living your life and living fully and engaging in it. The hell with politics, the hell with what's going on in the world, the hell with this idiots and the envious and the fearmongers and the haters. Now, you're limited. I mean, let's be real here. The fact that they dominate the world limits your options in terms of happiness and values and success, but it doesn't eliminate them. So resent them for limiting your possibilities, resent them for wasting your time, resent them for taking your money, but even with that resentment, don't stop pursuing values. Andrew, how would you rate the effectiveness of the Democrats' resistance to Trump? They seem to have taken the fact of becoming more brutish, cursing, doing strange social media videos, and claiming that we're in the Third Reich. Yeah, I mean, I think they're very weak. And look, they're very weak because what do they stand for? What is their argument against Trump? What is it that makes them different than Trump? What is it that they want Trump to stop doing? What is the principle by which they stand? And of course, if you search principles, you'll find the postmodern woke garbage that they have, and then it's all nonsense and it's all really, really bad and evil. And they can't really promote that. They know they're not electable. So they're stuck cursing him. I mean, I think many of them just admire his ability to do what he's doing and to get stuff done. They wish they could. I mean, the reality is that look, here's something you need to remember as we're so pessimistic about this country, but you need to remember this. Trump barely beat Kamala Harris. Barely beat Kamala Harris. I mean, can you imagine a weaker candidate than Kamala? And of course, Biden, a senile Biden. And he barely beat them. Barely. I mean, any decent Democrat, more centrist, more articulate, would have beaten Trump solidly. So I think you can imagine in the future, the right, while the right is growing in strength and I think is becoming more radical and more crazy, can J.D. Vance really win? He's not that likable. Who can win the Republicans? Now it's not good because the Democrats are pretty lousy, and it looks like the lead candidate right now for the Democrats is the governor of California, who's terrible. But yeah, I mean, they are pathetic. They don't have anything they can do. What is the governor of California trying to do? He's trying to mimic Trump. He's trying to be like Trump. He's trying to troll. He's not as good as Trump is, but he's trying. But no, I don't think the Democrats are effective. I think what's effective, what plays to their benefit is how bad Trump is, and the fact that the American people could see that, or at least some of the American people could see that. If they stayed quiet, I mean, what they should do is they should stop worrying about beating Trump as their own game, and critique him. Well, they can't because they don't have principles. So what are they going to critique him on? I mean, they should critique him without cursing and without trolling and without all that, and just assume that the American people will are realizing how bad Trump is. I mean, Trump's approval ratings are abysmal, really, really bad. Thomas, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate the support. Thank you. Andrew says, I felt depressed and I just willed myself to do something constructive, and it worked to alleviate the depression. Absolutely. Do you think such a common sense premise would be considered toxic and judgmental under modern psychology? Ooh, I don't know. I think cognitive psychology, which is quite dominant in terms of its clinical application today, I think, would approve of that. And I think, but that really is a question for Gina. I don't think that modern psychology is as bad as it used to be. I think cognitive psychology has made it better, and there's much more of a recognition of cognition, of thinking, and then evaluating. Not as much as it should be, but some, right? So yeah, so I think that I don't know that modern psychology would poo-poo that completely. All right, Liam. Mamdani is jihad with a smile. He only received 450,000 votes in the primary. There are over 4 million registered voters in New York City. My prediction, Cuomo wins. I hope you're right, as much as I think Cuomo is awful. I hope you're right, but I doubt it. I think Mamdani wins. I think he's got the energy and the passion, and I think people will vote for that. But we will see. The polls all show him winning quite easily. Now, the last debate was last night, and supposedly Mamdani did not do very well. But it's hard to tell. I hope you're right, really do. Not your average algorithm. The state has succeeded spectacularly in making us more and more into children than serfs. Yes, the welfare state does that. The regulatory state does that. Don't use this lawnmower to try to trim the hedges. Stickers do that. All the ridiculous, don't stick your finger into the electricity plug. I don't know, all the warning labels and all this. It infantilizes us. It assumes we're all stupid and idiots, and at some point we become stupid and idiot because that's the attitude. PB, how does objectivism build a logical progression from the initial axioms existence exist and A is A to derive its moral code? How logically to refute the saying you can't get an ought from an is? Well, this is not the time or the place to fully articulate that, but I would just say read the first few chapters of OPA. I mean, that's exactly what OPA does. Objectivism builds logical progression from existence exists through the epistemology, through reason as man's basic means of survival, to a moral code that basically places reason at the center of human life. I'm not going to do that on one foot right here. Again, I suggest you read OPA. How do you get an ought from an is? It's not that hard. What is man? Man is a living being. A living being must, the fundamental choice that a living being faces is the fundamental option is existence or non-existence, to live or not to live. Once a living being, and this is all ises, right? Once a living being chooses to live, And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of morality. Once you choose to live, then the question becomes, okay, how do I do that? What are the tools? What values and virtues should I pursue so that I can live? It's not automatic. It's not pre-programmed. We don't have it in our consciousness just ready to pluck. We have to figure it out. So we figure out the arts that facilitate the is which is life, that make possible the is which is life. And of course, the number one art is think, because empirically, observationally, and rationally, it's obvious that human existence, human life, depends on each one of our ability to think for ourselves. So that's the very brief, short one. But the answer to that is in The Virtue of Selfishness, and the first essay in The Virtue of Selfishness, the Objectivist Ethics. And if you want the whole development from metaphysics on, that is in OPA. And remember, these are not deductions. These are going to be inductions. You start with reality. You start with the facts. And then you induce the truths that allow you to progress from existence exist to the whole objectivist morality. But it is a sequence of inductions bridged together by deductions. But yeah. But that would be a whole 3-hour, thing that we'd have to do, and even then we wouldn't cover it. It's basically OPA. I encourage you to read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff. Kim, how are we supposed to go from this current government and society to a rights-respecting government? Seems we're slowly becoming a lost cause. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, right? So I think if it happens in the distant future, and there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. Who knows if our society might collapse? We might go through a period of authoritarianism before there's a revival of the founding principles. So I don't think the way things are going right now is going to lead us to a rights-respecting government. I think things will have to completely break before people re-engage with the idea of a rights-respecting government. Things will get a lot worse, in other words, before they get better, in my view. Raymond, did Stalin force confessions to deal with his conscience? Why did the Soviets invent so many tortures when a couple would do? Seems deeper than sadism. I don't know in terms of the torture. I don't know that a couple will do. I don't know how torture works. It's an interesting psychological question. And it's not just the communists, but the Nazis had all kinds of tortures. The Japanese did. In the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, the Christians tortured people in all kinds of ways, and they didn't just do one. I think multiple tortures is a way to completely break the spirit. You think your leg hurts, wait until your arm hurts, and your back hurts, and your testicle hurts, and everything else hurts, and then you slowly break apart. So you need multiple sources of torture. And the Chinese drip, and I don't know. I'm not an expert on this field, so I don't know. Why, so what did they want confessions for? Because psychologically, they wanted the pretense, this is both psychologically for themselves and also for the people that they were afraid of. And Stalin lived in constant fear that people would rise up against him. So they needed the constant reinforcement that they were doing good, that the people they were purging were really bad guys, and they needed to reinforce it for themselves, but they also need to reinforce it for everybody around them, even though, again, those people were fooling themselves, because they were constantly lived in fear that they would be next, that there would be a revolution that would take them out. Live by force, die by force. I mean, Stalin was very afraid of the head of the KGB. He was very afraid of the people around him. Daniel says, can a democratic society exist without capitalism? You asked this question yesterday, and I answered it. yesterday or the day before, and I answered it in length. Can a democratic society exist without capitalism? Well, all of them do. There is no capitalism in the world. So I don't know what you mean by capitalism. Do you mean a little bit of freedom, a little bit of property rights that we have today? There is no capitalism in the world. There's democracy in France, but is there capitalism? No. So the answer is yes. Now, for how long, I don't know. For how long can it exist? But yeah, in the medium term, decades, yes, democracy can exist without capitalism. If, when I say without capitalism, what I mean by that is real capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, everything owned by the private sector and real free markets. But we don't, so no country has that. America has existed for 100 years without capitalism. And if you mean by a little bit of capitalism, by some capitalism, by respect for some property rights, by some freedom, yeah, I think democracy needs to allow for some freedom in order to exist. I gave the example. Sweden became quite socialist and didn't lose its democracy as it nationalized industries and became quite socialist. Now, it didn't last because then they became poor and democracy basically demanded that they privatize and they go back to a more market economy. So, the democratic process partially self-corrects when things go too far, but not always. Not always. Sometimes it self-corrects. Anyway, I gave a longer answer day before yesterday, or yesterday, whenever you asked the question before. Raymond, China's industrial policy reminds me of Japan, yet people never blame it for the lost decade, dumping low-interest loans, national champions. Yeah, no question that Japan's industrial policy was the cause of the lost decade. A lot of people do blame it. A lot of people do see that and understand that. And I agree with you. China is very similar. China's in some ways more interventionist, in some ways less interventionist. The intervention is less comprehensive than it was in Japan. Japan had a system by which, really through the banking system, they controlled almost everything, at least in terms of big businesses. China, at least during periods, had allowed for more freedom than the Japanese did, even industrially. So yeah, I mean, and what you're seeing now in China is significant slowdown and significant debt problems and they keep papering over it and delaying the reckoning. But at some point, they're going to have a reckoning. At some point, they're going to have to pay the piper, just like Japan did. Jacob, I dare say for a random person not interested in philosophy, economics in one lesson is more important to read than Rand or any objectivist author. No, I definitely don't think that's right. I definitely don't think that's right, because at the end of the day, what Rand gives you is a way to live your life, guidance to live life, which is much more important than economics, and will ultimately impact your view of economics. But at the first level, just what values to pursue, how to pursue them, how to live, which is much more important than any economic text can ever achieve. So no, I would say Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead, Virtue of Selfishness. Even if you're not interested in philosophy, philosophy is interested in you. So get interested. Andrew, Objectivism is not against democracy when it comes to voting. Would you say properly America is a democratic republic? I mean that there is a role for majority rule in the objectivist politics, yes. Yeah, you could call it a democratic republic. I just think a republic captures that already. You don't have to. A republic has that as a feature. And I would add that it's a constitutional republic. So America is a constitutional republic. And voting is a feature of a constitutional republic, but not always majoritarian voting. So for example, you could have limits on voting. And an objective society might have limits on voting. You might have to have, you might have to have certain knowledge, you might have to have a certain amount of property. There might be all kinds of restrictions for voting. So in that sense, I don't want to call myself a pro-democracy, which assumes that everybody can vote. I don't believe in universal suffrage necessarily, right? In a proper republic. And it might be appropriate that, like they did, the senators were elected by state government rather than by the people. So, but who gets to vote? Who gets to vote is all a question. So I would call it a constitutional republic, not a democracy. Jonathan, will Trump allow free and fair elections in 26 to 28? I mean, that's a big question, and I don't know. I mean, I think he will claim he's allowing. He won't reject elections, and he will just appoint whoever the replacement is. But will he manipulate the system to try to get his people elected? Yes, you're already seeing it with the gerrymandering, which is happening, which is not conventional. Usually gerrymandering happens only once a year, once every 10 years. Now it's happening for the specific reason that he's afraid of losing the 2026 election. He'll use every trick in the book that he can without declaring no elections to get the people he wants elected. Will they be free and fair? I'm skeptical. Okay, final question. Lincoln, I just considered the left and the right represent two warring dystopias. The masculine totalitarianism of 1984 for the right and the feminine nanny state of Brave New World for the left. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think that's right. Although, remember that Stalin was of the left and Stalin was not exactly feminine. So, I think the analogy only goes so far. But yes, I think that's right. Or think about the supporters of Hamas who are part of the left. Would you call them feminine? No, they're masculine in the same kind of barbaric sense that people mean masculine these days. Okay, we got one more question. Do you feel like people, this is Andrew, do you feel like people are in too sulky or nasty a mood for living in modern America? Well, generally, I think being in a sulky or nasty mood is unhelpful to you or to anybody around you or to the state of any of us. So stop it. But yeah, I think it's. I understand why people are depressed and why people are fearful and why they're worried about the state of the world. I'm worried about the state of the world, but try not to let it affect your life, because there's too much to live for than to let them win. And this affects you directly. It affects how you live when you are sulky and whatever, sulky and nasty. All right, guys, I will see you all hopefully on Saturday. Stay tuned for what time and everything else. But yeah, have a great rest of the week and a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.